So I had this idea for a tabletop. It was going to be a checkered pattern, kind of a harlequin theme. But then I thought, what if I did the legs checkered? So the first thing I'm going to need is maple and walnut strips. I'm going to cut them 3/4 by 1 inch, and then I'm going to assemble them in my checkered pattern. I'm going to glue up the strips and the patterns that I need for one blank at a time, because it's kind of confusing. And after they set up, I'm going to pull them out. Being I made them 3/4 by 1 inch, I've left room for me to run through the joiner and plane them down so that each square of these pieces will be 3/4 by 3/4 when I'm done. That'll make us get a much better chance of the checkered pattern running correct. And this is what I was shooting for. All besides that little gap there. That's because of snipe. And I'll position that on one end of the piece so that when I start cutting my blocks, I don't get that nasty little gap. And here's what I wound up with. One mostly of maple and one mostly walnut. I'm gonna take them over to the chop saw, chop each one of these into about 10 3/4 inch pieces, and then I'm going to see if they will assemble and see what it looks like. I think the concept is proving itself out, but one thing that's going to happen here is all these glue joints are ingrained. When I put the glue on there, it's going to soak it up. It's not a strong joint, so before I do that, I'm going to find the center of each one, and I'm going to drill a hole in it. I'm going to drill a 1/2 inch hole. What I'm going to do after I assemble these is I'm going to stick a piece of threaded rod through this hole, and I'm going to use that to exert force pulling all these pieces together. I can't think of any other way to do it. It's kind of like trying to glue up a Jenga stack. So this is going to be a good plan. I made this little raceway to help me align all the pieces as I go. I'm going to cover it in packing tape, and I'm going to really put the glue on here heavy. Now it's time to stick the threaded rod through. We're kind of in a time crunch. I want it to be glued up and pulled up tight while the glue is still nice and liquidy and wet. But I noticed that this mechanical advantage of the screw is fantastic. And the bolt came out without a lot of trouble. I hooked the drill onto it and unscrewed it. Then I thought to myself, with all this ingrained, I'm not going to trust this turning on the lathe. So I took a long bit and I drilled out with maybe it was a 7/16, maybe it was a 1/2, I'm not sure. But I drilled it out nice and clean, and then I took a rod and I used the more is more theory on glue, slobbered it with glue, and drove the rod through there to give it some type of continuity. Now, if you have a workshop and you've got a shop dog, like most of us do, There'll come a time in every project where you'll look over, hear yelping, and you'll see your dog jumping, screaming, hollering, like possibly she's being pursued by a Sasquatch, a team of Navy SEALs, some type of monster. And so you stop, you go over there, crickets, silence. The biggest case of overacting I've ever seen. But let's continue. I'm going to use copious amounts of glue. And look at this close up. I think I've hit on why I use so much glue. It looks kind of like when you have an ice cream and you're putting chocolate sauce on it. You just can't get enough. A little bit more. But another reason is I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get this rod through if I'd get a second chance. I thought it might hang up in the middle. There's a lot of residue in there from the glue up. So I hammered it. And there's that end. And here's this end. So I go over to the bandsaw and I John Wayne these little pieces off one-handed. I'm going to take this over to the table saw. We're going to cut off the corners. Get it as close to round as we can. There's no reason to turn these corners like this. And we'll soon be turning this. I'm going to use a sharp roughing gouge, and the first thing I'm going to do is work this piece round. Now that we got it round, I'm going to start tapering it. My plan is to turn this into a mid-century leg, probably 3 inches on one end, 1.5 inches on the other, and here we go. I'm going to start tapering by pulling from the small end to the big end. I'll cut a little bit, then I'll go back to the small end, I'll cut a little further, then I'll cut a little further, and I'll keep doing this, and my taper will develop pretty organically. And there you have it.